You know, when you meet a kindred spirit, you can just tell. You can tell in their demeanor and how they speak to you. And Crystal Egger is one of them. And she is a joy to speak to. And I'm so glad that she is our featured guest for this episode of Recipes for Your Best Life, because she's as real as they get. Now, she's an accomplished gal. I mean, she's definitely been around the block. She's an Emmy-winning meteorologist and host. She's the founder of A Sunny Space documentary series where they profile successful women doing their thing. And she has even been on the Weather Channel and NBC's Weekend Today show. But life has not been a bed of roses for Crystal by any stretch of the imagination. And on this episode, she shares some of that, particularly what ensued after complications with her little baby that she delivered at just 27 weeks. Weathering the storm has been a process for Crystal, but at every phase of life, there's something new that she's discovered about herself and about how she handles different situations. So let's dive in and hear what Crystal has to say. Hi, I'm Mareya, otherwise known as the Fit Foodie. I'm a chef, holistic nutritionist, author, inventor, and mom. And I want to welcome you to my podcast. It's called Recipes for Your Best Life. And with every episode, I'm peeling back the onion on fitness, nutrition, health, wellness, and family. The truth is, you're the chef of your life. And for every important pillar, there's a great recipe worth sharing. So every week, we'll explore them together. Think of it as food for thought that you can really sink your teeth into. So join me, and let's squeeze the joy out of this life, because you only get one. Can I get a fork, yeah? Crystal, it's so nice to have you on.
Well, it's so nice to be here, and I'm grateful you chose me as your guest, so thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And I loved our first interaction with each other. We recorded a really fun video that everybody can watch. I'll post the links so you can take a look at our video together. But you're very much a kindred spirit, and I just love your energy and would love for you to share a little bit about your background, because you really come from an extensive broadcast background.
Yeah, so I never really envisioned myself going into meteorology, which I ultimately did in broadcasting. I started my career in marketing and PR, and I was stuck in an office all afternoon post-college.
Not fun.
I remember the afternoon slump and having to walk a block to Starbucks, and I just felt like it wasn't energizing me, and I needed something more. That wasn't going to be what fulfilled me my entire career. So I'd always loved math and science. Ironically, my girlfriend invited me to take a radio TV course at a local city college, and I had already done the UC Santa Barbara thing. But I thought, well, this sounds fun. Let's give it a try. And we went to these night classes at City College, and we had our own cable station. And they would let us do everything. We'd produce, we would anchor, write the script, and even do the weather. And I remember my professor, who I'm still very, very close to now. She used to be a reporter in Chicago, and she went on to teach courses there. And I remember her pulling me aside and saying, I don't know how much interest you have in the weather, but you seem really good at ad-libbing, and it's really hard to do. And you seem comfortable up there. So I would think about it. And so I started thinking more about how doing the weather would impact other people. Is this something interesting? And I felt like it is a universal subject. Everyone can relate to it. You know, I talked to my grandpa about the weather, my dentist, yeah, I could see this, but Southern California doesn't have a lot of exciting weather. So I'm going to have to go somewhere and really learn the weather. So I first enrolled in a 3-year program through Mississippi State, because I knew I wanted to have the credentials behind me and not be looked at like a a dingy weather girl. So I started the program and actually got my first job in Idaho Falls. And I was recently married and told my husband, can we move to Idaho Falls? I just got a job at the ABC station there. And we packed our car up and off we went.
And it's kind of one of those things that I think gets sometimes a rap that is really undeserved, but there's a lot of science and technicality to understanding the weather and then being able to convey it. I mean, what was the most challenging part of that role for you?
Thermodynamics, for sure.
See, that I bet half the people out there have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, well, I like I said, I always loved math and science and having a exact, solution to a problem. I loved finding the answer, versus all the analytical stuff. But thermodynamics is very complicated, involves physics and takes it to a whole nother level. But really the challenge is just living somewhere and getting a good feel for the weather patterns and how the terrain influences the weather. So everywhere I've lived, Idaho, my second job was at a morning show in Denver. That became a completely different challenge to forecast weather along the Front Range.
Which I used to live in Colorado. I think I shared that with you too. Yeah,
that's right.
We always used to say, if you don't like the weather here, just wait 5 minutes and then, then we can talk about it because it literally changes by the minute.
Yes. And you may have heard upslope, downslope. It's very common along the Front Range. So you could have a day where the wind is blowing down the Front Range and it heats up the air and there's not a cloud in the sky. It's beautiful. And then the wind shifts the next day and it's blowing up the Front Range and it cools and condenses. And you could go from 80 and sunny to 28 degrees and snowy within 24 hours, which is
I've seen it
insane.
I've seen it flip on a dime. What is the craziest, just out of my more curiosity, what is the craziest weather experience that you've ever had?
Oh, there's so many. Those wild swings in Denver for sure, because you got to be on your toes. We call it now casting because you can have such a localized effect caused by the mountains where it's like all hands on deck. Now we've got a whole new forecast to figure out. But there was the Windsor tornado, a town called Windsor, just north of Denver. I will never forget that.
Yeah.
I was live on the air during that tornado coverage, and that tornado was heading towards a daycare center, and my heart was just beating out of my chest. It was terrifying. An EF4 tornado, which is, extremely dangerous. EF5's as catastrophic as it gets. And so that was scary. And then I remember so many events at the Weather Channel. I was on the air with my co-anchor during the Japan quake and tsunami, and we covered that live for hours. Superstorm Sandy, the Joplin tornado. There are so many. I just couldn't believe, coming from Southern California, how powerful weather events can be in other parts of the country and the world.
So you really honed your skills in being able to present the news and present something that shifts, on the drop of a dime, and something that we can't control. The weather is one of those things that it's probably one of the most popular topics that people will shoot the breeze about, no pun intended, but you can't control the weather. And early into your career, you became pregnant and you ran into some complications. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, something else I couldn't control. So it was during my time in Denver. I was on a morning show, and really at the earlier stages of my career where I felt I had to prove myself. It can be very competitive. And we had a 5-hour morning show called Good Day Colorado. I would get up at 1 or 2 in the morning, depending on the weather of the day, and rush. We did our own hair and makeup, so everyone's, frantically getting ready, and you're live doing radio hits and often teases before your show begins at 5 a.m. So a lot of adrenaline. It's not a way to ease into a morning. My mornings are very different these days. But I remember my husband and I decided that we'd been married 5 years. I was 30 years old. It was time to have our first child. And I was such a planner. It was like everything was going to be perfect. I had it all planned in my head as to the baby shower and everything. 5 months into my pregnancy, I started to have complications and was taken off the morning show because I had to be put on bed rest, which was crushing because I had just envisioned, going all the way. And I was going to fly back to California. All my family's here, and we were planning a baby shower. Your first kid, everything is just so important, and it just got scarier and scarier. They eventually noticed at 22 weeks that I had no amniotic fluid left. So I had this tear between my uterus and my placenta that caused bleeding and contracting to the point where I ruptured my sac, and it becomes very dangerous at that point for risk of infection. So I was put in the hospital and just prayed every day that I was going to make it long enough for the baby to survive. And those were anxiety-filled days for sure.
Yeah.
And I made it to 27 weeks and 1 day. And my daughter was born weighing 1 pound, 14 ounces. So,
do you think, Crystal, that the stress and the hectic schedule and those, what we perceive as really, that's crazy to think that you were up at those hours, that contributed to what ended up happening? And for everybody listening, the story ends beautifully. She's a lovely, healthy child. But I think oftentimes in the blizzard of life, we take it in the face and we just keep grinding because that's what we feel like we need to do in order to make it. Do you think that your schedule and your hectic lifestyle contributed to that?
I absolutely do. Everyone tries to tell me, oh, you couldn't control this, because there's a lot of guilt that comes along with having a child that early and watching them struggle for so many months in the NICU. But ironically, my morning show had asked me to participate in a mommy to be like boot camp just a week before all of my problems began. And they wanted to videotape it live. And I had just been going on long walks and nothing rigorous. I wasn't into that kind of exercise anyways. I just took long walks with my husband, and I felt like I was already living such a busy life with my schedule. But I did this boot camp. It was called Hot Mamas. I'll never forget. And we were doing like lunges around the block and sit-ups on an exercise ball. And I was really keeping up because the camera was on me, and I felt like these other moms are doing it. Why, moms to be there. One of them's 8 months pregnant. I should be able to do this. And, you should trust your gut, because something told me that I shouldn't have been doing that. And I did it anyway. And within a week I had trouble.
Yeah. And sorry to interrupt you, but, and certainly there's no, we don't know. I mean, we don't know what causes what, and there's always kind of a divine plan. But I think you just said something that I really want people to tune into is you need to trust your gut. I think that there's a lot of social pressure out there. There's a lot of comparison. There's this idea that even when you're pregnant, you should be like killing it. And why are some people doing, 10K races when they're 38 weeks pregnant? But listen, everybody is different. There's not a one size fits all. And ultimately, you're the one responsible for your own health and for the health and well-being of the people around you. So what did that look like for you after your beautiful girl was born, how did life change?